Hi, guys, I'm Arm. Transmigrating to another world has become a very popular anime theme at the moment. In Mushoku Tensei, Greyrat transmigrates to the world of swords and sorcery and becomes a baby. In Zero starting life in another world, Subaru is summoned to another world to have encounters with the mysterious silver-haired beautiful girl and the cat elf. These are classic otherworldly hits, and the idea for these works comes from the anime I want to share with you today, The Familiar of Zero. What kind of charm does this anime have? Let's get started with the story. The story begins at a magic academy called Tristane. The academy is located in a mysterious another world where only nobles can use magic. The heroine, Louise, is a second-year student at Magic Academy and looks very cute. Although Louise has an aristocratic background, her magic ability is the worst in the school. Because of her inability to use magic well, Louise is often ridiculed by her classmates. In order to become a good magician, Louise is desperate to acquire a powerful familiar. In Magic Academy, every magician can use magic to bind master-servant relationships with magical creatures. For example, the dean's familiar is a rat. The dean is very lecherous and often uses his familiar to observe the secretary's private clothing. Because of its size, the rat can get into the secretary's clothes and help the dean get information. At this time, there is a loud noise outside the window. Louise's magic fails again. This makes her want to summon the powerful familiar even more. Her classmate Kerchi thinks Louise is very incompetent. Louise is enraged by Kerchi and vows to overtake her at the familiar summoning ceremony. On the day of the ceremony, Kerchi summons a very powerful familiar. Louise is under a lot of pressure. She chants an old spell. After the spell ends, she summons a civilian man. His name is Saito. Saito is from Earth and is very new to the world of magic. Because the teacher does not allow Louise to resummon a familiar, Louise is forced to bind to Saito in a master-servant relationship. After the kissing ritual, Saito becomes her familiar. Saito is engraved with the mark of familiar. He has a fever and soon faints. Saito wakes up and sees Louise again. He realizes that he is not daydreaming and feels very sad, because the language of another world is different from that of Earth. Saito can't understand Louise. Louise hates Saito for being too noisy and wants to use magic to shut him up. Interestingly, something goes wrong with Louise's magic, and Saito understands the language of another world. After a brief conversation, Saito gains a basic understanding of the world of magic. He doesn't want to be a familiar and sneaks away when Louise doesn't pay attention. The first person Saito meets is Guiche. Guiche is very affectionate and is dating his junior. He sees Saito and orders him to show appreciation, because when Saito fainted during the ceremony, Guiche sent him to Louise's room. Saito knows that there is a big gap between the aristocrats and the civilians. To get rid of Guiche, Saito thanks him. After Saito leaves, Louise chases him out. At Louise's request, Guiche helps capture Saito. Saito is controlled by magic and levitates in the sky. He looks up and finds that there are two moons in this world. In Saito's memory, he saw a strange passage before coming to another world. When he reached out and touched the passage, he was sucked in, and then Saito heard Louise's spell and became her familiar. Louise ignores Saito's thoughts and locks him up with chains. Saito tells Louise that he is from other worlds and that he does not want to stay here. Unfortunately, Louise is unsympathetic to what has happened to him. She asks Saito to wash her clothes and prepare the clothes to wear in the morning for her. It is his obligation as familiar and he can't rebel against her. Saito is highly adaptable. He knows that he will not be able to go back for the time being, and can only accept Louise's arrangements. At Louise's request, Saito prepares clothes for her. Because Saito doesn't have private clothing prepared for her, Louise orders him to bring those to her. Louise reminds Saito that he is now her servant and must dress her. If Saito does well, she will untie the chains for him. Thanks to Saito's efforts, he is freed from his chains. Louise then takes Saito to the restaurant. The breakfast for the nobility is very generous. Saito gets only a piece of bread for being a commoner. After breakfast, Louise and Saito go to the school square. Today is a day off for second graders, and each student is cultivating a bond with their own familiar. Because Louise's familiar is a civilian, she is taunted by Kerchi. Louise is rattled. She is dissatisfied with Saito and orders him to prepare tea. Saito is frightened by familiar passing by and bumps into a maid named Siesta. Siesta is also a commoner, and she has a crush on Saito. At this point, Guiche urges Siesta to bring the cake as soon as possible. Saito helps bring the cake to Guiche. Guiche is a playboy and he is dating another girl. Saito discovers that Guiche is dating two girls at the same time. In order to avenge Guiche, Saito exposes his scandal. Guiche feels humiliated and decides to duel with Saito. Louise believes that Saito can't beat Guiche and asks him to apologize to Guiche. Saito refuses, believing that he has made no mistake. Saito insists on a duel with Guiche. Guiche is very vile. He summons a powerful squire and orders him to duel Saito. Saito lives in an egalitarian country, and he hates Guiche's haughty attitude. Although Saito is weak, he still refuses to throw in the towel. To be fair, Guiche gives Saito a sword. The moment Saito picks up the sword, the familiar imprint on his body suddenly glows. Saito feels empowered. Guided by this mysterious force, Saito wins. But what he doesn't know is that his familiar imprint is very rare. It is the familiar imprint that has appeared in legend. The Dean is not sure what the consequences of Saito's imprint will bring, and can only keep the secret for the time being. Saito is very tired and falls asleep after defeating Guiche. He sleeps for 3 days and nights, and Louise is always by his side to take care of him. Saito is surprised. He wishes Louise would be so gentle with him in daily life. Saito shows appreciation to Louise. Louise believes that taking care of her familiar is what a master should do, and Saito doesn't have to thank her. She hasn't done laundry for 3 days, and Saito has to do her laundry instead of talking to her about boring stuff. After doing the laundry, Saito is asked to go to the classroom to accompany Louise. Kirchi is intrigued by Saito and deliberately debunks the fact that Louise can't use magic. Saito doesn't expect Louise to be so weak. He has something on Louise and sings a song to mock her. Louise feels that Saito gets too carried away and punishes him for not eating for a day. Saito is starving and begs her to let him eat, because Saito hugs Louise. Louise gets very shy. After Louise lets Saito eat, Saito thanks her by vowing not to laugh at Louise's poor magic and the size of her private part again. Louise doesn't expect Saito to mention her private part. She is enraged. Not only is Saito not allowed to eat, but his bed is thrown outside the hallway. Siesta sees Saito in the hallway. With her help, Saito enjoys a nice dinner. The people who work at Magic Academy are civilians. Because Saito defeats the nobility, the head chef admires him very much. When Saito returns to his room, he is caught by Kirchi's familiar. Kirchi watches Saito and Guiche compete. She thinks Saito is very cute and wants to have an intimate interaction with him. Kirchi is very hot and she has a lot of partners. Because Kirchi falls in love with Saito, her suitors are angry. Kirchi beats them off with magic. Just as they are about to have an intimate interaction, Louise breaks into Kirchi's room. Louise orders Saito to leave Kirchi or she will send 10 magicians to hunt him down. Saito's life is threatened and he can only leave with Louise. Louise's anger reaches its peak and she decides to punish Saito with a whip. Saito doesn't understand why she is so mad and thinks she is jealous. Louise tells Saito that she and Kirchi's family have been enemies since a long time ago. If Saito is snatched by Kirchi, she will feel very humiliated. Saito explains that he did not do it voluntarily. It was Kirchi who ordered her familiar to catch him. He is not good at swordsmanship and does not have any defensive capabilities. While competing with Guiche, he was dominated by a mysterious force. After the power disappears, he's back to a commoner. To ensure Saito's safety, Louise decides to prepare a weapon for him. Kirchi is reluctant to give up Saito. She goes to her friend Tabitha's room. Tabitha's familiar is good at flying. With Tabitha's help, she can catch up with Louise and Saito. While they are busy chasing Saito, Saito follows Louise to a weapon shop. Because Guiche's sword is big, Louise wants to buy one of the same sizes. The owner of the weapon shop sees that Louise is not good at picking weapons and wants to trick her with a bad sword. The owner takes out a very ornate-looking sword. He claims that it is the world's #1 sword and it is very expensive. But apart from being looked cool, this sword is useless. Unexpectedly, Louise is actually broke, and the money she has can only pay for a worn sword. Saito recalls what Siesta has said. When he was in a coma, Louise bought a lot of expensive medicinal herbs. Although the sword looks pretty bad, Saito is impressed. Kirchi discovers that Louise is out to buy gifts for Saito. She doesn't want to lose to Louise and deliberately buys the fancy sword. The owner is very lecherous, and Kirchi, with her charm, buys it at rock-bottom price. Kirchi gives the sword to Saito, much to Louise's displeasure. Unable to convince each other, they force Saito to choose his favorite sword. Saito is afraid of enraging them and cannot make a choice. As Louise prepares to duel with Kirchi, one of the swords suddenly makes a sound. The name of this sword is Darafuringa and it is able to talk to humans. Saito finds Darafuringa funny and ditches Kirchi's sword. Now that the stories of the protagonist come to an end. For now, let's see what Siesta has gone through. Since Saito doesn't know how to clean silky clothes, Siesta offers to help him. Siesta shows appreciation to Saito. Although Saito is only a commoner, he was very brave in fighting the nobility. Siesta gets a lot of courage from Saito. Saito doesn't understand why Siesta says that and feels very strange. After that, Saito meets the head chef. The head chef likes Saito so much that he treats Saito for a meal. Saito is curious why he hasn't seen Siesta. The head chef tells Saito that Siesta has resigned from Magic Academy. She is forced to work at the Count's house and left in a carriage in the morning. Saito doesn't know much about the rules of this world. Darafuringa reminds Saito that the nobles appoint a maid to work in the house to make her his lover. Saito is a kind person. He asks for the address of the Count's house and decides to go to rescue Siesta. This Count is the envoy of the royal family and has a very noble status. As he prepares to have an intimate interaction with Siesta, he receives a meeting request from Saito. Saito considers the Count being despicable. If he's willing to let Siesta go, Saito's willing to do anything for him. The Count is passionate about collecting books. He has always wanted to get his hands on the Kirchi family's magic book. As soon as Saito gets the magic book, he will let Siesta go. Saito negotiates with Kirchi. Unexpectedly, Kirchi uses magic books to threaten him to make him fall in love with her. Saito thinks Kirchi is doing the same thing as the Count, and he is very angry. Saito rejects Kirchi's offer. In order to rescue Siesta, he breaks into the Count's estate again. Kirchi fears Saito would be in danger. She arrives in Louise's room and wants to work with her to free Saito, because there is a huge difference between the nobles and the commoners. If a commoner draws his sword at the nobleman's residence, the nobleman can execute the commoner on the spot. Louise rushes to the Count's estate and offers to apologize to him. Kirchi pulls out the magic book, hoping that the Count will forgive them. Thanks to their efforts, the Count frees Siesta. Saito sees the magic book. This magic book is from Earth and is actually an adult magazine. After that, Siesta returns to the Magic Academy. To thank Saito, she offers to kiss him. In addition to adult magazines, there are many treasures from the Earth in this world. One of the treasures is housed in the palace. Since Princess Henrietta attends the familiar showcase at the Magic Academy, she decides to offer the treasure as a prize. This familiar showcase is very important, and every second grader will have to present their familiar. Saito is best at doing laundry for Louise. Other than that, he doesn't have any skills. Louise, not wanting to lose face at the show, asks Saito to come up with a skill that he can demonstrate as soon as possible. Saito meets Siesta while practicing swordsmanship. Siesta tells Saito that because Princess Henrietta agrees to be a judge, this year's showcase is going to be more grand than usual. In order to win at the showcase, every student is training their familiar hard. Before the showcase, Henrietta comes to Magic Academy. The first thing she does is to come to Louise. When Henrietta was very young, Louise became her playmate. Henrietta's father passed away not long ago, and she was very sad. Because she didn't have someone to trust around her, she thought of Louise. Henrietta considers her and Louise good friends, and she has been following Louise's news. Henrietta also helped to solve the conflict between Saito and the Count a while ago. With her help, Louise and Saito were not punished. The show is about to start, and Henrietta wants Saito to do well. Sadly, Saito doesn't have any skills. When he and Louise walk onto the stage, they are ridiculed by their classmates. Saito wants Darafuringa to help but accidentally falls. Louise feels very humiliated and forcibly leaves with Saito. Because the guards are sent to the show to protect the princess, the defense of the treasure house gets very lax. A thief named Fouquet arrives at the door of the treasure vault. She manipulates her familiar to launch an attack on the treasure vault. The treasure vault is protected by magic, and Fouquet's physical attacks make no effect. That's when Louise and Saito discover Fouquet. Fouquet grabs Saito. Louise wants to attack Fouquet, but she aims in the wrong direction, causing the treasure vault to be attacked. Her magic works and part of the treasure vault is blown up. Fouquet takes the opportunity to break into the treasure vault and snatch the treasure inside. When Fouquet flees, she abandons Saito. Tabitha wins the familiar showcase. She manipulates her familiar and catches Saito. Because the treasure is stolen by the thief, Henrietta has to report the matter to the royal family. Louise hears that the royal family has not been doing well lately and is very worried about Henrietta's situation. Saito always remembers scene of Louise and Fouquet fighting. After Henrietta leaves, Saito asks Louise why she didn't abandon him just now. Louise tells Saito that nobles who abandon their familiar are not aristocrats. Soon after, the secretary receives a very important piece of information. A suspicious person hides in an abandoned hut in the forest. According to the intelligence, the secretary draws the suspect. Louise looks at the portrait and determines that she is Fouquet. The dean does not want to tarnish the reputation of the academy and decides to send someone to arrest Fouquet. The teachers from academy don't want to cause trouble, and only Louise, Kirchi, and Tabitha step forward. Although Louise's magic ability is not good, Tabitha and Kirchi are both strong. The dean gives this task to the three of them. Then they come to the abandoned hut in the forest. Strangely, Fouquet is not in the house but left the treasure behind. Just as Tabitha is about to take the treasure, Fouquet's familiar appears. Tabitha and Kirchi use magic one after another, but their magic can't do any harm to Fouquet's familiar. Louise believes that the nobles cannot escape. she uses magic to attack the familiar. Saito, fearing that Louise would be in danger, rushes out to protect her. He thinks Louise is doing something stupid. With her strength, she can't beat Fuke's familiar, and she doesn't have to sacrifice her life for dignity. Louise is unwilling to give up. She knows she is weak, but if she runs away, others will look down on her even more. Saito hands Louise over to Tabitha and launches a physical attack on Fuke's familiar. He uses the sword that Kirchi gives him. The sword is of poor quality and quickly breaks. Furing then notices that Saito is in danger and urges Saito to use him. The moment when he draws his sword, Saito is suddenly filled with power, but Fuke's familiar is so powerful that Saito ties with it. Louise takes the treasure out and wants to help Saito. Saito is surprised to discover that this treasure comes from Earth and is a rocket launcher. Since Louise can't use the rocket launcher, Saito takes it over. The rocket launcher is so lethal that it helps them defeat Fuke's familiar. At this time, the secretary suddenly shows up and picks up the rocket launcher. Her real identity is Fuke. She attracts them to find out the way of using the rocket launcher. The secretary aims the rocket launcher at them. She doesn't expect that this is a single-shot rocket launcher, which can only be used once. Saito seizes the opportunity and slaughters her with his sword. After the mission, Saito asks the Dean about the origin of the rocket artillery. The Dean tells Saito that the rocket launcher is a relic of a mysterious man. The mysterious man was carrying 2 rocket launchers. Since the Dean was in danger, he rescued him with one of the rocket launchers. Unfortunately, the mysterious man was seriously injured and soon passed away. The Dean saw the value of the rocket launcher and gave it to the royal family. Saito speculates that the mysterious man comes from Earth. Unfortunately, he has passed away, and Saito can't find any clues to go back. To celebrate getting back the treasure, the Academy holds a ball. Louise is very grateful to Saito. At the beginning of the ball, she offers to invite Saito to dance. Saito thinks that he should do so, because he is her familiar, and it is his duty to protect her. Louise is then knighted. Henrietta admires Saito so much that he is allowed to kiss her hand. Saito has not made a move and Louise reminds Saito that this means that he can kiss Henrietta. Saito misunderstands Louise's words and kisses Henrietta on the lips. Louise is raged and demands that Saito apologizes to Henrietta. Henrietta doesn't blame Saito, and she gives them a task. Hearing that some of the nobles in the city are abusing commoners, Henrietta asks them to help investigate the matter. To complete the mission, Louise and Saito must live in the city for a while. Louise changes into civilian clothes and prepares to buy daily necessities. She decides to make money by gambling since she doesn't have enough money. However, Louise loses all the money she has. Louise knows Henrietta is in a difficult situation and doesn't want to turn to her for help. At this time, a tavern owner notices them. He thinks Louise is very cute and asks her to work in the tavern. Louise can't find a place to live and has to agree with the tavern owner. The boss holds a tip contest in the tavern, and the winner will have the right to use a treasure in addition to the prize money. The treasure is a stunning dress with magic that enables users to entice people. Louise loves the dress very much. To win the race, Louise forces herself to work hard, but she considers herself noble and does not want to serve the commoners. Saito is very comfortable with tavern life, but Louise can't stand the shabby environment. She is so frightened by the bats that she sleeps next to Saito. Toward the end of the game, Louise still can't learn to serve customers. At this time, the tax collector comes to the tavern. The tax collector is a nobleman. He does not want to stay with the commoners and kicks all the guests out. Louise thinks the tax collector is wealthy and decides to serve him. The tax collector is very lecherous, and he wants to touch Louise's private part. Saito stands in front of Louise, trying to protect her. Louise is touched by Saito. She reveals her nobility and punishes the tax collector with magic. The tax collector does not expect Louise to be a noble. To apologize, he gives all the money to Louise. Because the tax collector and his minions leave a lot of money, Louise wins the tip contest. Louise is so happy and she puts on that beautiful dress. Unsure about if it's because of magic, Saito feels very excited. Louise reports the tax collector incident to Henrietta. She completes her mission and returns to the academy with Saito. It is already holiday time, and Kirchi is ready to visit Tabitha's home. Tabitha is one of the royals of neighboring countries and has a very noble status. Tabitha's father is the younger brother of the current king. A few years ago he was caught up in the royal struggle and became a victim. To protect Tabitha, her mother even got a mental problem. But the king still refused to let Tabitha go. Because Tabitha is good at magic, the king deliberately gave her the most dangerous tasks. Tabitha got them done every time. However, the king still hates Tabitha and he sent her to Tristane. Now that the story of Tabitha is over, let's see what Saito is doing. Saito has transformed a discarded cauldron from the kitchen into a bathtub and is taking a bath in the square. Siesta is interested in Saito's bathtub. she walks into the tub and bathes with Saito. Louise is rattled when she sees the scene of them being together. When she meets Guiche, she drinks their wine. But what she doesn't know is that Guiche's girlfriend, Montmorency, has poured a magic potion into the wine. Because Guiche is a playboy, Montmorency wants to use magic to possess Guiche completely. Louise, influenced by magic, confesses her feelings to Saito. Saito is very surprised. Montmorency explains to Saito about the magic potion, but she isn't sure when the effect would be gone. Louise becomes very clingy to Saito. Saito doesn't know how to deal with her. He hugs Louise and vows to get her back to normal. In Tristane, it is illegal to make manipulative magic potions. Saito threatens Montmorency to report her to the academy if she can't get Louise back to normal. In order not to be jailed, Montmorency agrees to Saito's request. Montmorency and Saito arrive together at the location of the Water Elf since crafting a magic potion requires making a pact with the Water Elf. Strangely, something wrong happens to the Water Elf. Montmorency uses magic to send a message to the Water Elf, hoping that she will help them. The Water Elf tells them that she has been attacked by magicians. As long as they eliminate the attackers for her, she will agree to help them. While waiting for the attackers, they are confronted by Kerchi and Tabitha. Tabitha receives a mission from the king to defeat the Water Elf. The Water Elf has been adding water to the lake, causing nearby villages to be flooded. Saito's and Tabitha's goals conflict and they decide to talk to the Water Elf. Water Elf can only exist in water. It keeps adding water to the lake to seek her missing treasures. Saito promises to find the treasure for the Water Elf. The Water Elf sees the imprint on Saito. That's very powerful magic. Because of this imprint, the Water Elf expresses her trust in Saito. With the help of the Water Elf, Louise finally returns to her normal state. Afterward, Henrietta goes to Louise's room and assigns them a very important task. Henrietta is about to marry the king of a neighboring country. She has written a letter to the Prince of Albion. If the letter comes to light, the marriage contract with the neighboring country will be sabotaged. Henrietta asks Louise for help retrieving the letter. Guiche overhears their conversation outside the door and decides to go with them. Henrietta assigns a captain of the guards named Wards to send them to Albion. Wards has another identity, Louise's fiancé. They met at a very young age. Wards thinks she's a potential magician. He likes Louise very much and wants to marry her when the mission is completed. Just as Ward is about to kiss her, Louise suddenly calls out Saito's name. Wards doesn't give too much importance to Saito. He believes that Louise will soon fall for him. Wards and Saito have a contest. In the end, Saito loses to Wards. Louise reassures Saito that Wards is a very good magician and that it is normal to lose to him. Saito is angry and doesn't want to hear her praise Wards. Louise and Saito are at odds. She tells Saito that she is going to marry Wards. After Louise leaves, Saito and Guiche are attacked by Fouquet. Wards deliberately tells Louise that Saito has left. The situation in Albion is very chaotic and they must find the prince as soon as possible. Wards abandons Saito and takes Louise on the ship. Meanwhile, Saito, with the help of Kerchi and Tabitha, fights off Fouquet, but the ship has already set off and it is difficult for them to catch up with Louise. Saito speculates that Fouquet is Wards' companion. He isn't sure of Wards' identity for the time being, but Louise must be in danger. Louise and Wards then arrive at the prince's residence. Because Louise wears the ring Henrietta gives her, the prince recognizes her. The prince asks Louise to tell Henrietta that an evil organization is secretly manipulating Albion's civil war. As Albion's prince, he must protect Albion even if he sacrifices his life. Louise completes the task given to her by Henrietta. Wards wants to marry Louise in Albion and wants the prince to be a witness. Louise rejects Wards' offer. Wards tells Louise that he is a member of the evil organization and that she just has to follow his orders. Louise tries to escape but is controlled by magic. Her soul is bound inside her body and she can't resist Wards. As they are about to finish their wedding ceremony, Saito arrives at the church. Guiche's familiar is good at finding gemstones. With their help, Saito finds Louise. Wards, fearing that his identity would be exposed, takes the lead in killing the prince. Saito attacks Wards to protect Louise. Wards realizes that Saito's strength has increased and does not continue to fight him. He takes Henrietta's letter and turns the church into a sea of fire with magic. Thankfully, Tabitha rescues them from the church. Louise recalls seeing Wards when she was a kid and feels very sad. Saito sees her tears and takes the initiative to kiss her. Back at the academy, Louise gives Henrietta the prince's ring. Henrietta asks Louise not to self-blame, and she is grateful that she has brought back the prince's relic. After that, Louise and Saito get into an argument. Louise is angry that Saito has damaged her private clothing. Saito feels that Louise is very stingy and leaves the room. he meets Siesta in the square. Siesta is preparing to go home on vacation. While they chat, Saito learns that Siesta's great-grandfather is also from Earth. 2 dragons appeared at that time. One of them disappeared into the eclipse, and her great-grandfather, sitting on top of another dragon, suddenly appeared in the village. In search of clues to return home, Saito travels to Siesta's hometown. Kerchi overhears their conversation and follows behind them with Tabitha and Guiche. Louise wants to apologize to Saito, only to find out he is left with Siesta. She asks the head chef and learns that Siesta has vacationed home, because Siesta's hometown is home to the ruins. Louise brings a teacher from the academy with her. After a period of searching, they find the legendary dragon. When they say dragon, they mean a fighter aircraft. The teacher thinks that as long as Saito rushes to the eclipse in the fighter aircraft, he can return to Earth. With the help of the teacher, Saito gets fuel to activate fighter aircraft. Darafuringa tells Saito that he can use weapons freely, because fighter aircraft is also one of the weapons. Saito can drive it, just as Louise is saddened by Saito's departure. Guiche brings bad news. The evil organization forms a new nation in Albion and decides to wage war against their country 3 days later. 3 days later also happens to be the day of the eclipse. Saito is reluctant to let Louise go. Louise is so proud that she doesn't keep him. Affected by the war, the dean announces that the college would be suspended indefinitely. Louise learns that Henrietta will command the army and makes the decision to join the army. She leaves a letter telling Saito to leave as soon as possible. Saito can't read the text of another world and wants Kerchi to help translate it. Kerchi tells Saito that the evil group has waged war against them. Louise follows Princess Henrietta and joins the army. Saito recalls his past with Louise. Although he is an Earthling, he can't help but worry about Louise's country. By the time Saito is ready to go, the war has already begun. To protect Louise's country, Saito pilots fighter aircraft to the battlefield. Saito eliminates many enemies, but the fighter aircraft quickly runs out of bullets. Tabitha and Kerchi follow Saito to the battlefield. They join forces with Guiche to eliminate Fuke's familiar. Louise, fearing that Saito would be in danger, jumps onto his fighter. Faced with Ward's attack, Louise awakens at the last minute. Her true strength is very strong. Louise defeats the army of the evil organization after she gets awakened. The only survivor is the magician who once controlled Louise. His ring is the treasure of the water elf and can manipulate humans. Guiche knocks out the magician and gets the water elf's ring. Saito's fighter aircraft was damaged in the war and cannot take him back to Earth. Louise is very touched that Saito stays and helps her. She kisses Saito in the hope that they would be together forever. The whole anime ends. This is a very classic otherworldly romance anime. An ordinary teenager is summoned to another world and becomes the aristocrat's familiar. The male protagonist Saito has been recognized by many girls for his charm, but the only person who makes his heart leap is his master, Louise. In order to protect Louise, he even gives up the opportunity to return to Earth. The love between them is very touching. If you were Saito, which girl would you find the most attractive? Feel free to say what you think in the comments section. Well, that's it for today's video. If you enjoy my video, don't forget to give me a like and subscribe. There are many cool anime recaps on my channel. See you in the next video.